Fala, meus Mafia, Fernando Schmude com mais um Leading the Charge no Buffalo Rumblings. E hoje com o prazer de contar com a participação do Matt Parrino aí, que cobre os Bills lá em Buffalo, né? Cobre lá para o Syracuse.com. Vai ser uma honra aí poder trocar uma ideia legal com o Matt, trazer ele, introduzir ele à Bills Mafia brasileira, ele que já tem um contato aí com os brasileiros, né? A gente vai conversar um pouco sobre isso. Como vocês já estão acostumados, quando eu tenho convidado aí estrangeiro, né? Então 30, 40 minutos trocando uma ideia com o Matt aí, e aí depois os últimos 20 minutos vou usar em português para traduzir um pouco da conversa aí, os principais pontos e interagir com a galera no chat. Fica à vontade para mandar perguntas e para interagir aí no chat também, vai ser bem legal. Matt, thanks so much for being here today. It's a pleasure to have you today, man. Thank you so much, and I'm sure Bills Mafia here in Brazil is excited to have you today. Welcome to the Leading the Charge show. A quick, okay, now it's working.
I said obrigado to you, my friend. Thank you so much for having me
awesome.
on the show. I appreciate it. I followed you for many years now. I'm coming up on my 5 years since coming back to Buffalo and joining the beat. So it's cool to chop it up a little bit with you.
Yeah, awesome, man. Awesome. It's always been awesome to follow your job and how you work covering the Bills. No doubt you are the go-to guy. You saw those guys are the go-to guys for us to have all news and to have everything Bills related covered. So I want to say in name of all Brazilian fan base, we appreciate your job very much, and it's great to have you here today to talk some Bills with us.
Yeah, man. I've met so many different Bills fans since I started on the beat, and obviously growing up in Buffalo around the team and the organization, the community. But a couple of buddies that from Brazil that I met, Bernardo, a couple, Alberto, a couple of the other guys that come up for one game a year. Every time they come up, I try to make it a point to catch up with them. And so, man, I love Brazilian Bills Mafia, man. It's a great part of the fan base.
Yeah, man, we are really a loyal fan base because most of us became Bills fans in the 90s. So it's been a long period of the drought and all those hard times. But nowadays things are getting better and we stayed loyal. So I guess we deserve this better period right now, just like Buffalo people. And so you were talking about you've been covering the Bills for 5 years now, like on the beat. Yeah. And I was just gonna ask you about how did it happen? How did you meet Bernardo? And I read that article that you wrote, amazing job, and I think Bernardo could represent all of us there, all of us Brazilian people who love the Bills. And unfortunately, it's not so easy for most people down here to be able to go to Buffalo, watch a game. It's expensive, and Buffalo isn't the easiest place to go in the US, right? So we have easy.
That's correct.
Maybe it's easy to go to Miami, but it's not easy to go to Buffalo. So Bernardo can be there once a year. And how did it happen to meet him and to have this idea of writing an article about it, actually?
So he had for a long time, Bernardo was, engaging with a lot of my content on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and we would talk back and forth. And then finally, one day he DM'd me a few days before he was going to be in town for a game. And he said that he stays with somebody that lives in Buffalo here, a doctor, when they come to town and they kind of have a party, him, Alberto, Bruno, the whole crew kind of comes out. And so I was like, you know what, let's meet up at one of the wing joints in town. And I'd love to just talk to you about your journey. Cause you're right. It is different. Like this voyage that they go on every year or most years to try to go to a Bills game, and they make it like a whole experience. They not only go to a Bills game in Buffalo, but they try to do like a Bills game in Buffalo and then like the next week's road game, if that ends up being the case. They went to New York City last year after the Bills game. So we hung out. My son was with me. So I took him over to their family's house, and it was really a cool night. Just got to know them a little bit, experience just like the excitement that they had for the the game day experience. I mean, I'm so used to being in the building and watching all of it up close, but when you only get a chance to do it a few times a year, even for season ticket holders that go to 7, 8, 9, 10 games a year, it becomes just kind of like your house, right? Like when you walk
Hmm.
in there, everything is the same, like the food that you eat, the drinks that you buy, and like the people that you sit next to. But for them, coming to these are this like just special experiences and getting to hear the enthusiasm about it and how they even came to be and how they met the American family here that ended up becoming close. Members of their family went to Brazil, and they were in Bernardo's wedding. It was all this awesome stuff.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to, try to do it justice and tell the story. And we become very good friends. I mean, we talk all the time. He's usually sending me fire hot Bills takes in the WhatsApp text messages, and
Yeah.
he's awesome. He just had a new baby. Shout out to Bernardo if he's watching.
Yeah. Abraço aí, Bernardo. Você está acompanhando, com certeza. Just sent a hug to Bernardo here,
That's awesome.
and yeah, he has some hot takes sometimes. He's a passionate guy, right?
He is. We need those though. We need those, and I always tease him on the
Yeah,
show. I always tease.
yeah,
I think
absolutely.
recently he said something about Sean McDermott, like just being upset with Sean McDermott, and I
Yeah,
was trying to talk him off the ledge a little bit, like, hey man, like, and I do this for a lot of Bills fans, like, you really do need to use some perspective, like when we're evaluating. I know it's like wanting to get to the Super Bowl, win the Super Bowl, and all that, but 17 years without the playoffs. I was just talking about this on the radio locally in town on WGR on Friday.
yeah,
Like Sean McDermott, for all of his faults, 5 playoff appearances in 6 years. How many playoff games, an AFC championship appearance. They've done a lot of good things. Now, that's not to say that the expectation shouldn't be high for them moving forward. And I think they are. But I do think it's like, you get close and you start getting antsy and people just start firing off those takes.
yeah. No doubt. He usually retweets my commentaries, and when he doesn't, he disagrees with it, he retweets the same way disagreeing, and it's all good, man, because I think some people takes it's personally, right?
Right.
Like, oh, you can disagree with my opinion and things like that, but it's all good, man. We are all rooting for the Bills, and it's not because we disagree on some stuff that we need to have trouble with each other, or hate each other, things like that. And Bernardo is all the time like with hot takes, and I'm like, easy, Bernardo, not so much, man. No, I'm mad and things like that, but it's all good. I think we already had some disagreements about MJ and LeBron. You and me. So
Yes.
it happens.
Yes. So the funny thing about that is, though, like I argue for LeBron all the time because I've grown up with them. And what's funny is people don't realize this. I'm 40 years old. I watched Michael Jordan in the finals, like as a
Yeah.
youngster. And so like I experienced that as well. I don't know, man. For me, they're both just such the epitome of greatness. Like I hate arguing against Michael Jordan, but on the other token, I'd hate arguing against LeBron James. So it's like
Got
it's
it.
kind of a funny conversation.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And at the end of the day, it's really difficult to compare people from different ages, because
Yes.
the game changes, and you can't. And when you start like, oh, because back in the day, like talking football, oh, back in the day it was harder to pass, so if you put Chin Kelly nowadays, he would throw for 5,000 yards and things like that. But all suppositions, you can't be sure about stuff. You can't be sure about how athletes would adapt to different circumstances, and so it's always tough to have an idea about different eras, and that's what makes those discussions really difficult, in my opinion.
Yeah, football especially too, because there's so much that goes into like how good an individual is, how much talent he's surrounded with, right? Like, so
Yeah,
comparing guys through the ages, like the Peyton Mannings to the John Elways to the Dan Marinos to the Patrick Mahomes, like how much are people like really evaluating, like, all right, who had the best offensive line, who had the best group of receivers, who had the best running attack, and weighing all those things together. And then there should be some type of formula, right? We're in the PFF age. There's all these metrics for everything. Like we should have
yeah,
some type of weighted system that tells us, like, spits out a number and tells us who's best. So maybe you could save some of the arguments. But to your point earlier, the arguments are what this is all about. It's what makes it so fun, especially the social media banter.
Absolutely. Rafael is here. Rafael is a great contributor here in the show. He's always participating in Portuguese, and he's a big fan of your Shout podcast. And
Thank you.
Yes, Rafa is amazing, and you just got some recognition for your Shout podcast. Congratulations, man, from
Thank you.
The award, right, from Syracuse.
Yeah, the Syracuse Press Club does like a yearly
Yeah.
award show, and they named us the best sports podcast. So that was really cool. Got a chance to see all the people that I work with, because Syracuse is about 2 hours away from Buffalo. And I work for Syracuse.com, but I live in Buffalo because I cover the Bills all year long. So I don't get to see a lot of people that I work with out there. So this is a kind of a yearly event. I get to go see a lot of people from the Syracuse Post-Standard, and it was a really cool night for Ryan and I yesterday.
Awesome. So let's start talking some Bills, because that's what people want to hear, right? So
Indeed.
We could talk about other stuff all night long, but good. So how excited are you about the additions this year? The Bills just recently added 2 more veterans, and in my opinion, maybe they could have important roles with Puna Ford, especially, and Latavius Murray is a running back. How do you see both of them contributing this year? Especially Puna Ford, I think Latavius, maybe, in my opinion, maybe it's more about, does Damian Harris work? Can he stay healthy? If not, maybe Latavius have a bigger role. But how do you see those additions to the Bills team?
Yeah, so starting with Puna Ford, like ever since that things started percolating a couple months ago, like after the first wave of free agency that the Bills were interested in Ford, Ryan and I have talked a lot about it on our show. It's like, okay, this is really exciting for one major reason. Like, what happened before they brought Daquan Jones to the Bills? There wasn't really an answer consistently at that one technique role that's allowed other guys to eat on that defensive line, and especially at that second level. And so I think what we saw the addition of Jones be for the Bills last year is it opened so many more things up. I mean, when Von Miller was healthy, he was on track for 10 plus sacks. Greg Rousseau, before his injury, on pace for 10 plus sacks. I think Ford, the addition of him, gives you that second wave of one technique that allows you to play the same style at that position. Jordan Phillips isn't, as big as he is at 340 pounds, he's not that prototypical one technique. He's not going to get physical, get in there and eat up double teams consistently. He can do it, and at times he's done it well, but it's not something that he's asked to do. He's a really good pass rusher. And so I think what Ford specializes in as a run defender and as a space eater, you can ask him to do some of those, unselfish things and then let other guys on the defensive line eat. And the one guy I'm thinking about with this Ford addition more than anybody else is Ed Oliver. The sack numbers just haven't been there. I can't believe we're sitting here going into year 5 and we can't talk about one season with 5+ sacks for this guy coming out of Houston. That's what everybody was talking about, is his ability to cause chaos as a pass rusher on the interior. I think Ford is another piece potentially that if they have a bunch of answers at one tech and could allow Ed Oliver to get a little bit more creative with what you do with him as a pass rusher in a contract year, maybe that finally unlocks him. And I know Bills fans are, they want to trade him because they don't want to pay him and then, or lose him for nothing. But for me, the Oliver conversation around this season is everything's coming up roses for the Bills, no matter what happens. Either he just ends up leaving, right, in free agency. Maybe he signs like a lower level deal. Maybe he doesn't have that explosive season. Or he does have that explosive season and the Bills re-sign him and then they have an answer at 3-tech moving forward. Or he leaves like Tremaine Edmonds and you get back a comp pick and then that money's off your books and you could spend it in other places. I think that there's, Brandon Beane has proven this time and time again. There's a lot of different positive outcomes, and sometimes it's the one that you're maybe not thinking the most about that could end up still helping the team in the end. So I think I love the Ford signing. On Murray, quickly, I think he's right now set up to be the Duke Williams or Duke Johnson role this year.
Johnson, yeah.
I think that you could safely get him on the practice squad at 33, and that allows you to keep those other 3. And I think at Murray and at his age, you probably want to keep him a little bit fresher for those November and December months. But if things don't work with those top three guys, I think he's a really nice option to kind of get into the mix. But who knows? Maybe he gets in the room, picks up Ken Dorsey's offense really quickly. They like what he brings, and maybe he's a better complement to James Cook. And then you're off to the races there. I think what they've done there is given themselves a bunch of different options, and whatever one kind of rises to the top with Cook, I think they'll roll with it.
Yeah, awesome. And we haven't seen the Bills like uh, using it this way. They rotated the defensive line a lot, but normally we see they changing like the defensive tackle in pairs and keeping Oliver with Lotulele in the past, and then Oliver with Daquan Jones
Right.
recently, and then rotating in pairs the defensive tackles or even the entire front four. But can you see in a situation where they might start to use even Puna Ford alongside Daquan Jones on early down, since Bean has hinted in they go in a different direction with their linebackers and maybe going smaller there, maybe with Bernard, or if Dorian can win the job. Can you see maybe they rotating in a different way, like using Puna and Daquan Jones on rundowns early and keeping Oliver fresh for pass rush situations, maybe?
I mean, yes and no. Like on one hand, I like the idea of getting big body guys in there on early downs together. And I think Ford and Jones, I think Jones was a little bit better pass rusher than anybody anticipated last year. So I think
Mhm.
to your point, there's some possibilities there. But I don't think they're going to cut in drastically to Oliver's snap count. I still think that they probably view him as their most versatile and arguably their best interior defensive lineman. Like I think his run defense actually gets a little bit less love than it deserves. I think he's been really good at times as a run defender, and when they ask him to play over the ball and kind of take on double teams himself, even despite his smaller stature, he does a pretty good job with that as well. It's just I don't know. I don't know if you should ask a 290-pound dude to play that role when you got a bunch of 320 plusers just waiting to kind of, fill those gaps. But to your point, like I think even going back to the second level and then the DBs, like they have to get real creative with how they operate. They have to have a counterpunch now to a lot of what these offenses have done to them the last couple of years. I mean, whether it be Cincinnati last year, in Buffalo, Kansas City, in KC the year before, like the Bills have to have more elite passing game answers for their defense, and how they get to that, whether it be changing the scheme a little bit, maybe going to more of a defensive back heavy rotation, maybe playing to your point a little bit smaller at linebacker. I think all things are on the table. I'm really excited to see how they roll things out at training camp. Everything will be vanilla here over the next couple of weeks at
Yeah.
rookie mini camp this week, and then OTAs and mini camp in June. But once we get to training camp, we'll get kind of an idea of maybe what they want to do.
Awesome. Taking advantage of this point and trying to focus a little bit on the linebacker position. How have you seen this situation, Matt, with Edmonds leaving? Obviously, he got paid, but I've been talking talking a lot about the situation. Like, if the Bills really saw Edmonds as a irreplaceable piece, they could have found ways to keep him on the roster, even overpaying. But if he's that really irreplaceable guy, I believe they would be able to do so. But yeah, even Brandon Bean hinted recently about how Edmonds might be a little too big, maybe with smaller guys who can run with receivers sometimes and in the slot and things like that. And he used this argument to justify picking Dorian Williams 1 year after picking Terrell Bernard, to similar players in the sense of size and athletic ability and things like that. How do you see this competition going forward? How do you see what are your expectations for this competition this year?
Mm-hmm. The Tremaine stuff's really interesting because I do think that they loved him. I think they thought that they valued him as a player, but I think what they've come to learn is their defense as constructed, wasn't getting the job done. And so to keep it intact by paying that massive number to Tremaine Edmonds in the middle with Matt Milano already getting big money. It just isn't smart roster management. And so I think moving in a different direction and maybe seeing the position in a different way and putting a little bit more value on the coverage piece. Like Tremaine Edmonds really good sideline to sideline. He's fast. He can run down guys. But I think you're probably going to be better off with a smaller linebacker that can kind of ping pong around a little bit, kind of like Matt Milano, and can get sideline to sideline and read offensive linemen and blockers a little bit better. And so I think for me with Dorian Williams, going into it, of course, it makes sense for Brandon Beane to kind of take the foot off the gas pedal and say, we see him as an outside linebacker, play up the fact that he was in a system at Tulane that was very simplistic and he's got a lot of work to do to learn this scheme. But if you like the skill set and the traits and what he can be in your defense, then I think you figure it out and maybe go away from, he's always said, Sean McDermott has always said that the Mike linebacker in their defense calls it. But you have Jordan Poyer, who's been back there forever. You have Matt Milano, who's a veteran of, it's going to be his 7th season in this defense. Maybe you kind of share the responsibilities a little bit and let the most talented guy play there, especially with what you have to face in the AFC with some of these other offenses. Whoever gives you the best chance to defend the passing games, I'm much more interested in those answers than anything like that would be predicated on stopping the run or anything like that. I think Tyrel Dodson's probably the safest player in that spot because I think he can come in, he knows the defense, he's a really smart guy, he can play multiple spots, but I think that the ceiling is potentially much higher with Williams.
Got it. And how about Terrell Bernard? Because I've been on record like, I'm the president of Terrell Bernard fun club here, right? But I really like the what I saw from his college tape, and he's another guy who basically was drafted the same place as Dorian, around pick 89th, I think, and Dorian 91st. So that's a quick guy, and I loved what people said about him pre-draft, like, he's a leader, he can communicate really well, he's a smart guy, lives in the film room. So this kind of stuff got me excited about the possibility of him getting a shot right now. And I think since he's older and he's been there 1 year, maybe Dorian Williams can be in his role to begin his career, like learning the defense and waiting on the wings, and maybe Terrell Bernard can get the shot first. You have the opportunity to cover the team from very closely. So how do you see Terrell Bernard, and could you see those traits when you were there covering the team, or not so much? How do you see the possibility of Terrell Bernard becoming this kind of leader of the defense, like Edmonds was prepared to be all his period in Buffalo?
It always felt like he was trying to get up to speed, and everything seemed really big for him at all the stages, even going back to training camp. I mean, you saw flashes of all the stuff that they talked about in the scouting process, right? Like his ability, his high level recognition skills, his ability to shoot the gap, get in the backfield, cause chaos. You see it. You mentioned his tape. I mean, you watch any of those Baylor highlights and the dude's like flying around, like, making plays. And I think that's kind of what they're envisioning with him. I don't know if he is quick enough to play the middle linebacker spot, only because you have to cover so much ground, but they seem to believe that he can. So if that's the case, and he takes a jump from year 1 to year 2, he spent this offseason getting his body ready and being a little bit more ready for the opportunity. And this is another thing I talk about a lot. Think about this. These rookies come in, right? And it's this massive amount of information that gets thrown at them in a short amount of time, from rookie mini camp to the end of training camp. And then, like, you do all that time and you have all these practice reps, and then you do the preseason, which kind of like it comes to a peak, and then you're basically on the bench until they need you. And so when Bernard got thrown into that game a few weeks into the season, after basically getting downshifted to special teams responsibilities, it's not surprising to me that he it seemed like it was too much for him, and he just was a little bit of a tick behind because you didn't get all those first team reps. Tremaine Edmonds, Fernando, like if I could take you into what it's been like covering the team, every single day I was out at practice over the last 5 years. Some portion of practice consisted of Edmonds and or Milano over at in front of four trash cans lined up like an offensive line, going through the mental reps of the playbook. And like, okay, this is the play, this is the offense, this is our defensive call, this is my responsibility. And literally just running through the motions over and over again, the mental reps of it. Because when you get out there, you have to be able to react almost like it's second nature, like you're breathing. And to ask a guy like Terrell Bernard, who had none of those reps, like early, like once training camp was over, and really even throughout training camp. I mean, Tremaine Edmonds is still getting all those first team reps. So I just think he was at a little bit of a disadvantage, and I'm very interested to see how much more comfortable he feels in year two. And if that's the case, sky's the limit. I think he's definitely going to be in the mix there.
Awesome. Yeah, that's exactly the reason why I completely understood when Bean was like talking about Dorian Williams and say, oh, he's going to start outside, back up to Milano, learn defense and things like that, because it's really kind of unfair to expect a guy coming from college and to be able to just plug him in Edmonds' place and go and be the leader of this defense. It's really tough for a rookie third-round guy to be able to do so. We're talking about Edmonds, a guy who back in the day, Kyle Williams started to make a transition of his leadership role and in the meetings and things like that to Edmonds as a 19-year-old guy, and he grew on this role. And so how do you replace that so quick? So it's kind of difficult to expect Dorman to do so ASAP, like as soon as he gets to the team. So I really don't expect him to do so, but who knows, maybe he can be really impressive early on and earn this job. I'm really excited to see this competition. And do you see maybe Spector, or like you talked about Dodson? Dodson is low-key a guy who's been developed for quite some years now also, right? Coming out of Texas A&M, if I'm not mistaken, and learning the defense and also getting his opportunity. And that's going to be an interesting competition, right?
Yeah, and I think like Dotson to Bean's comments last week when he said, or maybe 2 weeks ago, that he'd say that Dotson's the leader in the clubhouse right now for that job before they start any of the offseason program, and then they've started the offseason program, but I mean like the work here and OTAs coming up, and then the training camp. But Spector is like this fun little wild card because like just the way that he plays. The fact that he spent the entire offseason in Buffalo working out at the training facility probably has just a greater understanding of the defense at this point. And so if he comes in and he's blowing their hair back with the way that he's out there reading keys and getting into the backfield and maybe making some plays in training camp, it wouldn't surprise me if he got the nod. I mean, look at they started a 6th-round draft pick in Christian Benford over their first-rounder Kyer Elam last year. So I don't think there's anybody in this linebacking group that has the kind of accolades or skins on the wall, if you will, to say that they're the no doubt about it day one starter. I think this is going to be a full-blown competition for the job. And if Spector comes in and is obviously sticking out as somebody that can potentially make plays there, I think they go with him.
Absolutely. I think I tweeted it in past few weeks about I have a feeling with Dodson. He just reminds me Angelo Crowell, when we have Takeo Spikes and he got injured and we needed to replace him, and Angelo Crowell got in and played. He didn't play to Takeo Spikes level because it was expecting way too much, but he did his job. He did a good job playing majority of snaps and doing a good job at linebacker position. I get this feeling with Dodson. I think he's pretty capable. I think people kind of underestimates his capabilities. Maybe he's not Tremaine Edmonds. Obviously, we can't find this kind of player everywhere. But I think he's better than people gives him credit for.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, Andrew Crowell, that's a blast from the past. I mean, I just brought up his Pro Football Reference. I mean, he had 3 really productive seasons, and
Yeah,
that those kinds of guys in the NFL, they pop up all the time. And Spector was somebody that they seemed really excited about when they drafted him, getting him where they got him, and everybody's raved about him in the building. I mean, he started games at Clemson. He played big time college football. Like,
yeah.
I don't think that the moment would be too big for him, and he's kind of just been quietly hanging around. I know that Matthew Smiley is a fan of what he did last year as a special teams player, so we'll see. And then Bernard, the real X factor for me too, for Bernard, like, is the versatility. Like, I don't know what he's going to be in the next 3 years. Like, I know they're talking a lot right now about Mike Linebacker, but when they drafted him, there was even some murmurs about him maybe being a safety someday and moving into a different role just because of his body type. I'm interested to see if he added muscle, if he added weight, like if he looks bigger. We'll get a look at him here over the next week or two. But that'll be interesting. And yeah, I think to me, that's the most interesting overall position group to kind of watch. I'm also really interested in that right tackle spot, even though I think it's going to be Spencer Brown. I want to see if they bring any more competition there. And then, like we mentioned, the running backs, like that's going to be super fun.
Absolutely. And yeah, I really think they love Spencer Brown. They've been saying it all off season, and I don't know if you were there today in Micah Hyde's
I
soft
wasn't.
podium.
No,
No, but Spencer Brown just beat Josh for his crown, right? At
I
the
saw
home
that.
run.
Yeah.
So at least it seems his back is fine. So it's good to have Spencer Brown enjoying a healthy off season. Big expectations for him next season. But I'm really curious about Osiris Torrance because that's a guy. If I don't expect Dorian Williams to come in and be a starter right on, but on the other hand, I think Osiris Torrance is really capable of being inserted in the right guard spot and might be even an upgrade to Bates, a guy who I seem like a really sound technical guy, but maybe lacks the physical and the athletic ability to be an elite guard in the NFL. And with Torres, it's different. So how do you see it? Do you think Torres can be a plug and play starter early on and maybe move Bates to that role where he can be a backup to mostly entire line? That's a really versatile guy out there.
For sure. It's a great question, and it's one that, like, I have a strong stance on, but I'm nervous in the sense that knowing the Bills, mindset about this over the past few seasons and their hesitation to give rookies that big a role early on. But I think this is a completely different situation. I think they're drafting him for a specific reason. Brandon Beane didn't shy away from that when he talked about it. They need somebody that is a bigger, more powerful blocker that can set their anchor, block against powerful defensive tackles. And to me, this is a guy that he's almost like the only guy they have in the interior that can do that. Even Mitch Morse, as good as he is, sometimes it feels like he gets a little bit overwhelmed with some of the bigger, nose tackles in the NFL. And so I think Torrance comes in, and I mean, I'm really looking forward to that matchup with him and Quinnen Williams or him and Chris Jones, and seeing if that's a little bit of a different ending. And I know Connor McGovern probably ends up lining up at left guard. They signed him, although he did play some right guard over the course of his career too. So I don't think there's everybody seems to think that left guard spot is right him and pen for McGovern. I don't know. And I know that Torrance played at right guard as well, but I'll be interested to see where they line guys up when training camp starts, and wherever Torrance ends up. Bates is making some money. McGovern's making some money. It makes sense for both of those guys to maybe end up at a guard spot. But I like the upside of Torrance, and I think that they can let him play early, let him maybe make some of those mistakes early. And if things work out, I think you could have a really strong piece down the stretch.
Absolutely. And people here are even talking still on the offense about Shakir. I just missed the question here in the chat, but people are curious about Shakir. Shakir has been working with he worked with Eric Moulds this offseason. I couldn't name a better guy to teach a wide receiver. To honestly, love me some Eric Moulds. So And Shakir also got some reps even from Gabe Davis against Miami in the playoffs. I was surprised to see Shakir getting a lot of snaps early on in that game, in Gabe's place early in the game, and later on Gabe started to get more reps again. And against the Bengals, Gabe lead the wide receiver group in number of snaps. But Shakir might have a great opportunity to become an important piece to this offense. And how did you see his rookie season and the expectation going forward for Shakir?
I love Shakir's upside in year two. I mean, it's almost like everybody forgot about him, right? They go out and they sign Deontay Hardy. They go out and they sign Trent Sherfield. And I think both of those guys can factor into the slot in some type of way, right? Like Sherfield did a lot of work out of the slot for Miami last year. Kind of reminds you of, hate saying this, but like a poor man's Debo Samuel type of style player.
Yeah,
And then you got Hardy, who a lot of people want to just throw him into that slot position. But if you go back and watch some of his New Orleans stuff, he played a lot outside too. Like he's not.
yeah,
I don't think you could just place him into the slot right away. Although I do love the run after catch that both of those guys provide, and I think Shakir can be a rack guy too. But again, I think Shakir falls into that pot. He reminds me a lot of Gabe Davis. Obviously, a different body type, but I more mean like role. Like if you go back to year one, they just asked Gabe Davis to learn every spot, and then where we need him, they're going to throw him in. And I think
yeah,
that's what the Shakir plan was last year. And then, so I think that's going to continue in year two. And I think he has the chance to establish a role for himself. I mean, with McKenzie gone, I know that Hardy and Sherfield are here, but if I'm Khalil Shakir, I'm looking at it like, all right, I already know this system. I'm coming to training camp with a leg up. I want to be the number 3 wide receiver in this offense. And we already know that it's likely that Dalton Kincaid becomes this number 2 or number 3 weapon, depending on how you want to shake things out with him and Davis. So it's going to be, they'll be fighting for scraps beyond that. I mean, you're talking about Dawson Knox, you're talking about Hardy, Sherfield, Shakir. There's a lot of mouths to feed. And then you talk about the running backs too. You know, Naheem Hines can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's going to
yeah.
know the system better. James Cook, obviously, that's what they drafted him for. When they talked all about his pass catching ability. So a lot of weapons. I like the different flavors that they've now added for Ken Dorsey. And Ken Dorsey's now had 8 months to diagnose everything that went wrong, figure out what they want to be, find an identity, set the identity over the next couple of months, and give people specific roles and let guys kind of either earn them or not earn them, and then go with the guys that you trust once the games start.
Absolutely. And the great thing about all of this is the number of names that we can bring along here and expect something out of it. Because we're not talking about maybe 1 or 2 possibilities at the linebacker spot, and if it goes wrong, we are doomed. Or the same thing at the wide receiver spot. We talked about Shakir and then Hardy, and we didn't mention Sherfield, who's done a great job for the Dolphins last year and might be able to raise to earn a bigger spot. Who knows? So there are a lot of options. And then Dalton Kincaid, the first round pick. How did you feel about this pick when it was made? And how do you feel about his possibilities of contributing right now, real quick? Because when you talk about Davis early, especially early in his rookie year, second year, we saw a lot of Gabe Davis being moved inside and helping blocking sometimes, like a kind of a move tight end in some situations. And now you have a tight end who, if he's not a great blocker in line, but he's a better blocker than an Isaiah McKenzie or Cole Beasley in this slot. He's a bigger guy. His size alone makes him a better blocker for a wide receiver than those smaller guys. So how do you see the options with Kincaid? Did you like the pick? How are you envisioning his role in year one?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a big role in year one. I think that if you wanted to sell me on Kincaid ending up as the number 2 targeted player in this offense by the end of the season, I'd listen to it. I still think it's probably going to be Gabe Davis, then Kincaid, maybe then Knox. But who knows? We'll see. I mean, everything's going to have to go right. He's going to have to stay healthy. He had this back injury last year that I think is something that we're going to still have to monitor. I know the doctors know it went around to NFL teams, but that's something that people are going to be talking about. If he takes a big hit, how does he handle it, and so on and so forth. So that's going to be a talking point. But as asking me if I like the pick, yeah, I think that the Bills had to find a way to be more diverse and find more answers when things aren't going right. And that was Stephon Diggs' biggest complaint at the end of the season, is that, they were winning games, but the offense was just too hard. They didn't have enough easy buttons. And especially when teams started to really shading over to his side and trying to take him out of the game. Brandon Beane has even talked about it the last couple of weeks. It's like, all right, if teams want to take Diggs out of the game now, they're going to have to deal with all these different variations of what this offense can be. And I think Kincaid is one of the most exciting parts of that. I agree with one of the commenters here that he's probably going to end up being your starting slot receiver, more so than tight end too. And I think so. We'll see a lot of 12 personnel because of the position that he plays. But I think that 12 personnel is going to look different than most teams' 12 personnel because of the limitless potential of him as a pass catcher. I mean, I think in a lot of ways, like we've seen over the years, like the Chiefs use two tight ends. You never remember their names, right? They roll 12 personnel, and I think they've had 3 or 4 other tight ends that I can never remember their name. But to me, Travis Kelce is what you're talking about, that move tight end that doesn't really play like a tight end because of the plays that he's able to make and the routes that he's able to run. I know it's very crazy to compare anybody to Travis Kelce because he's a unicorn, and but if you could find a player that plays that kind of role in your offense, maybe not at that same level, man, this offense then all of a sudden becomes really scary. And so I think there's a lot of upside for Kincaid in this offense. And I think they're going to feel the pressure to give him opportunities because they traded up to get him. There's already been questions about how they used Kyer Elam last year after trading up to get him. And I don't know if they want to go through that again and be in a situation late in the season where you almost wonder if they even trusted the rookie cornerback to put him out there. And I think you could throw all of that out the window if you just get them on the field and let them go through their growing pains earlier in the season.
Absolutely. I would love to see that. And we need him ready for the playoffs, not him ready for week 1 probably. So I hope he can be used. And just like you said, Matt, the 12 personnel sometimes going to look exactly like our 11 personnel because Kincaid will be the slot guy and maybe just a big slot guy. Remember how we used to have David Nelson as our slot wide receiver? That's a big wide receiver, big slot guy who played a lot of snaps as slot for us. So Kincaid can bring some of those stuff to this offense. Carl Toman with super chat here. Thank you, Carl. And he's asking, do you think that running game will take off if the likes of Cook, Murray, Harris running the right side behind Morse, Torrance, Brown, and maybe this big slot guy helping with blocking if the defense goes small with nickel defense? Do you see our running game finally taking off?
Yeah, I think that this is going to be a much more dynamic and diverse running game. And I think that, they went out and they got players that, that Aaron Kromer likes, that he trusts. Like a wild card in all of this is David Edwards, who, was played on the Super Bowl team a couple years ago for the Rams, had a really, really nice season and comes over as a very versatile piece, is kind of like, he's different than McGovern. And McGovern had this really great season last year as a pass blocker, but as a run blocker is really bad. I know this, Carl's asking about the right side. We'll see what that ends up looking like. But I think they have a lot of competition potentially for some of those interior spots. I don't think that I'm not putting Edwards in the mix to maybe win one of those jobs right now. I know he's gone through some concussion issues, but there is a solid understanding of what Kromer wants. And that's, to me, is going to get him maybe into the mix. But I also think Torrance, if he ends up at right guard, one of the benefits of getting a guy that's a little bit more of maybe not the athletic profile, the mobility of some of these other guys like Spencer Brown and Mitch Morse, he's playing with Spencer Brown and Mitch Morse. These guys are going to be able to show him a little bit of the tricks of the trade when it comes to how to get out in space and maybe even at his size, do that a little bit more, move and pull and get out and try to just knock guys' heads off and open up holes in the run game. There's some fun opportunities from my perspective to be able to do some of that stuff depending on where they end up lining him up.
Absolutely. Can't wait, man, to see this team. And just like you said, OTAs are about to happen, rookie mini camps, and there are a lot of exciting things to see and to follow during this preparation for next season. Matt, I don't want to take too much of your time. 45 minutes already. I really appreciate you taking your time to being with us today, especially not just Bills Mafia in the US, but especially Bills Mafia in Portuguese-speaking countries and Latin America, and especially here in Brazil. So I really appreciate. And you told me off screen that you've been here for a couple of days for an UFC event in São Paulo, but couldn't enjoy. Are you a soccer guy? Do you watch any soccer games, or do you have any soccer teams you root for?
So I was actually just talking about this last night. I am not a soccer guy.
Okay.
I've tried several times. I played the FIFA video game for a couple years there to try to get myself into it. But I just never understood. I used to work with a guy that was a huge Manchester City fan. And so I would always root against them to give him a hard time. But no, I don't have a soccer team. But I do want to experience a soccer game at Brazil. And Bernardo and the boys had told me a couple of the clubs that I have to be studied up on.
I don't know what Bernardo told you, okay, but I want to show you your Brazilian team now, okay?
Oh, okay.
Okay, it's gonna be Botafogo, okay?
Yeah, that's his squad.
That's the team who's leading Brazilian Championship right now. 4 wins in 4 games, okay? And we are the good guys because Flamengo is like the Patriots, you know, they are the cheaters and the bad guys. And Botafogo, we are leading the championship right now. We have an American owner, okay? We have an American owner, so you have the connection.
Okay.
All right. And we are with 4 wins in 4 games leading the championship. It's a team from Rio. So when you come to Brazil, you can go to Rio, watch a Botafogo game. And Bills Mafia, we have some Botafoguenses in Bills Mafia too. So we can take you there to watch a Botafogo game and root for a Brazilian team, okay?
I love it. I can't wait. We got to set this up in the next year or two. I'm going to get it on the calendar. I'm going to come down. We'll do the Brazilian experience, and we'll do the soccer game.
I have a feeling that Bernardo is going to be mad at me, okay? But I'll wait and see. I don't think he agrees with my choice of team for you, but
so he does like that team, and I think a couple of his buddies are Flamengo fans. There's a little bit of back and forth about it. So yes. I think that's the team.
Flamengo is Patriots. I don't know if Bernardo is Fluminense or Botafogo, but Botafogo is the right choice. Okay.
Okay.
And if somebody says something, you say, oh, look, they are the top of the table. They are unbeaten. So Fernando got me the right team.
That's awesome.
Man, thank you so much, man.
Thank you, man.
But fire is like Botafogo means. Fire in English, okay? So that's the.
I love it.
Okay, so I already made Anthony Marino and Greg Thompson and Anthony Prohaska. Everybody's Botafogo now, okay? So I'm bringing a new fan base out of America. So we will be part of that. Thank you so much, Matt, for being here. I will continue a little bit in Portuguese so I can translate some of this stuff. But I really appreciate you taking your time to be here with us today and leading the chart, talking some Bills. Had a blast, man. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, and go Botafogo. There we go.
Let's go Botafogo and go Bills. Thank you, man. See you.
Take care.
American fan base, thank you so much for being with us in this leading the chart today. I'm going to continue in Portuguese a little bit, translate some of the stuff to Brazilian and Portuguese-speaking countries, so people who couldn't understand what we talked so far will be able to do so. I really appreciate you taking your time to be with us in the leading the chart, and next Tuesday I will be back, but in Portuguese with Arthur Murta talking Bills. Next Sunday I will be back with Greg Thompson here, okay, talking Bills in English, obviously. So you're invited to be part of it. Hit that like button. Don't leave without subscribing to Buffalo Rumblings channel. You can also subscribe to my own Fernando Schmude's channel. And thank you so much for being with us today. Tá aí, galera, participação do match especial aí, né? Gente fina demais, trocando uma ideia legal. Mais um entrando aí pra galera aí que eu tô forçando um Botafogo aí, né? Mas tem que aproveitar a fase é boa, né? Eu tô tentando aproveitar. Mas é isso, bate-papo muito legal com o Matt aí, tocando em vários assuntos, né? Sobre essa off-season. Comecei falando sobre a questão das adições, né, dos Bills nessa semana, Puna Ford, defensive tackle, e Latavius Murray, né? E aí o Matt achando que o Latavius... Eu comentei que acho que o Latavius Murray é mais um plano B para o Damian Harris, caso ele não fique saudável, né? E aí o Matt falou, olha, eu acho que o Latavius Murray é um cara que você consegue segurar no practice squad, é um cara mais veterano que você vai querer ter ele saudável e pronto ali mais para dezembro, mais para a hora que o clima muda, que fica pior, né? Você ter esse tanque ali para quebrar tackles, correr entre os tackles, então é importante ele estar saudável ali nessa época do ano. Ele acha que o Latavius é um cara que pode ficar mais nessa situação, né? Para essa situação. Já o Puna Ford, ele acha que vai contribuir muito logo cedo, né? Mais um cara para jogar como one technique, nose tackle, né? E fazer o serviço sujo, né? Manter o pessoal livre ali, a mesma coisa que o Daquan Jones vinha fazendo. Eu perguntei se ele vê, né? Uma coisa que eu tenho mencionado bastante, eu acredito que é uma possibilidade real, apesar dos Bills não rotacionarem muito assim individualmente jogadores, eles normalmente rotacionam toda a linha, né? Trocam os dois defensive tackles e os dois defensive ends ao mesmo tempo e voltam com os grupos, vamos dizer assim, eles rotacionam os grupos, a gente não vê toda hora 4 jogadores a gente vê os 4 jogadores, na verdade, rotacionando, saindo 4, entrando 4, e mantendo grupos, né, de 4 jogadores na linha defensiva juntos ali. Mas, apesar disso, se ele não vê essa possibilidade de repente, alinhar mais Puna Ford e Daquan Jones em jogadas claras de corrida, early downs, né, primeira descida e tal, para tentar manter os linebackers mais livres, né? E aí ele falou que não acredita muito que vão cortar muito, né, que vão tirar muito playing time do Ed Oliver. Ele acha que ainda vem o Ed Oliver como o principal defensive tackle da equipe, agora está no ano de contrato e deve ter muitos snaps. Ele acha que o Ed Oliver faz um bom papel também contra o jogo terrestre, apesar de não ser lá o defensive tackle maior do mundo, né? Então ele não acredita muito nessa possibilidade, é algo que eu tenho mencionado aí, que eu acredito que possa acontecer, né? E manter o Ed Oliver de repente mais fresco aí para jogadas terceiras descidas, situações segunda e longa, né? Situações claras de passe para que o Ed Oliver possa ser mais agressivo no pass rush. Mas vamos ver, né? O Ed Oliver que vai estar em ano de contrato, então precisa realmente fazer um grande papel aí se ele quiser receber esse ótimo salário na próxima temporada, né? Aproveitando nisso, falei dos linebackers, né? Perguntei como é que ele vê essa disputa, né? Ele mencionou, o primeiro cara que ele mencionou, assim, o Tyrell Dodson, né? Que muita gente de repente, já não está vendo muita possibilidade de ganhar essa competição, né? E ele falou coisas interessantes sobre o Tyrell Dodson, né? Que o Tyrell Dodson passou toda a off-season em Buffalo, né? Treinando em Buffalo, treinando ali no clube, vamos dizer assim, né? Treinando ali na academia dos Bills, estando em Buffalo, treinando ali nos Bills mesmo, se preparando para a próxima temporada. Ele é um cara que o legal da gente poder ter o Matt aqui, né? Que é um cara que cobre o time no dia a dia, está ali de perto e vê coisas que a gente não tem possibilidade, né? Às vezes de ver. Ele falando que o Tyrell Dodson é um cara que tem já uma certa liderança dentro do elenco, é um cara que tem uma voz ativa dentro do elenco, tá? E ficou em Buffalo se preparando para essa próxima temporada, e talvez é o cara que, na opinião dele, talvez saia na frente nessa disputa entre peças da casa para ganhar essa vaga de linebacker 1, de Mike Linebacker. É um cara que já conhece bem a defesa, que estava sendo desenvolvido aí por 4 anos já, né? Desde que não foi draftado lá de Texas A&M. E aí é uma peça que, de repente, possa ter essa oportunidade de ganhar a posição de Mike Linebacker, apesar de, né, eu achar que o Dodson ainda, ele não é que não seja um cara atlético, mas ele é um cara também, não é lá o maior linebacker do mundo, mas é um cara mais pesado, maior, é um cara que você não se preocupa contra o jogo terrestre perder o peso e a possibilidade de impacto ali que o Tremaine Edmunds tinha, porque se ele não é tão alto quanto o Edmunds, mas ele é um cara mais pesado e tal. Mas o Dodson, na cobertura, ele passa a ser um cara que já pode ser mais explorado, como o Bean mencionou naquela entrevista ali, que ele fala que o Edmunds é um cara que é injusto você mantê-lo numa cobertura contra um wide receiver e tal, né? Que eles gostariam de linebackers mais móveis, mais ágeis, que têm essa capacidade de correr com esses caras mais rápidos. Então, nesse quesito, o Dodson acaba sendo um pouco um alvo para os ataques adversários em termos de mismatch. Mas interessante ver essa informação do Matt de que o Dotson ficou lá em Buffalo treinando, se preparando para essa temporada, levando muito a sério essa disputa, essa disputa pela posição, e acreditando muito nessa possibilidade de ganhar essa posição de Mike linebacker. Ele fala sobre o Dorian Williams, quando ele fala do Dawson, ele fala, olha, mas de repente o cara com mais capacidade atlética e mais talento, de fato, para se tornar esse linebacker, seja o Dorian Williams, né? O novato que foi draftado agora, natural do Bean falar que ele precisa se aclimar com a defesa, aprender a defesa, realmente aprender a defesa, realmente ele estava num esquema muito simples lá de Tulane, e agora ele precisa, então, aprender muita coisa nessa defesa dos Bills para ser o Mike linebacker e posicionar os companheiros e tudo mais. Então faz muito sentido o que o Bean falou, de ele realmente começar sendo reserva do Milano, special teams, e aprender a defesa e não ficar contando muito que ele vá ser um cara titular tão cedo. E aí eu comentei que realmente eu não acredito que ele vá ser esse titular tão cedo, porque é difícil você esperar que ele entre no lugar de um cara como o Edmonds, que foi o líder dessa defesa por tanto tempo, né? E realmente tem essa capacidade como novato de chegar e tomando conta da defesa. Eu acho bem improvável que o Dorian Williams tem esse papel logo de cara. O Matt mencionou que você tem o Poyer, tem o Hyde, que já estão ali desde sempre, o próprio Milano, que pode facilitar se precisar que o Dorian Williams, se o Dorian Williams se mostrar de fato o mais talentoso, o mais capacitado em nível de jogo e não de comunicação, liderança e tudo mais, para ser esse Mike linebacker, talvez a aposta possa ser feita confiando que Matt Milano, Poyer, Hyde, esses caras possam cobrir um pouco essa área que vai faltar com o novato, né? E aí, nesse sentido, eu pedi para ele falar sobre o Bernard, comentei, né, com a minha expectativa com relação ao Terrell Bernard, como eu tenho expectativa de ver, de ter uma oportunidade, o que a gente via pré-draft, de que se falava muito dele ser um cara muito estudioso do tape, um líder da defesa de Baylor, um cara com uma ótima liderança e tudo mais. Ele que pôde acompanhar de perto a temporada de novato do Bernard, eu pedi para ele passar o que ele podia ver ali no dia a dia, né? E aí ele falou assim que realmente passou muito a sensação assim de início que o Bernard estava realmente, tudo era muito para o Bernard, vamos dizer assim, sabe? Estava ali querendo aprender a defesa, observando os titulares, obviamente. Aí ele mencionou, né, que o quanto é difícil essa situação para novatos e pessoal que chega na equipe, né, até veteranos que chegam na equipe, né, no primeiro ano, porque você pega uma pre-season onde você joga, você aprende, mas você põe em prática nos jogos e tudo mais. Só que acaba a pré-temporada, você vira basicamente um jogador de special teams e fica ali esperando, né, uma oportunidade. Então você não tem muito as repetições e você não está ali jogando de fato e vivenciando o que está acontecendo. Você está apenas mentalizando, né, o que vem acontecendo, as repetições mentais na sala, no tape, nos treinos, ali vendo os titulares tendo a maioria das repetições e tudo mais, e nos jogos. Então, não foi surpresa o Bernard, quando jogou, ter tido a dificuldade, segundo o Matt, porque, de fato, tudo parecia muito para o Bernard, como novato, tendo que aprender muita coisa na defesa, 2 posições, Mike linebacker, outside linebacker, special teams, não tendo muito playing time. E aí, quando jogou, de fato, a coisa ficou difícil para ele. Ele está curioso para ver como é que o Bernard vai aparecer agora para a segunda temporada, como é que vai ser na disputa, se ele vai aparentar, de fato, tá mais familiarizado e que as coisas não vão estar sendo demais para ele, o que eu acredito que possa acontecer com o Dorian Williams esse ano, pelos mesmos motivos que aconteceram com o Bernard, né? Então ele está bem curioso para ver. Ele acha que o Bernard é um cara que tem a questão do biotipo dele, né? O biotipo mesmo dele, um cara leve, um cara não tão alto, né? Para ser o Mike linebacker, como que vai funcionar isso? É um cara até com corpo de safety, segundo o próprio Matt. Então ele está curioso para ver se o Bernard vai estar maior, vai estar mais forte, como que vai estar a movimentação dele, né, nos treinamentos. Agora rookie minicamps que vão ter agora, e os OTAs ali, tudo muito vanilla, como ele falou, né, o termo usado para tudo muito, ninguém vai fazer nada demais, vai ser a base ali, só a base da defesa, o pessoal treinando só para voltar ao ritmo, nada de muito esquema, muita coisa. Mas de fato que essa competição de linebacker tem tudo para esquentar muito nessa off-season, nessa pré-temporada, e vários nomes interessantes, né? E aí eu mencionei Spector, mencionei não cheguei nem a mencionar o Klein, que é o cara que eu vejo como a base, né? Se tudo der errado, se nenhuma dessas oportunidades que os Bills têm, esses tickets, vamos dizer assim, né? Da loteria que os Bills têm aí para ser um bom linebacker, um bom Mike linebacker, um bom capitão de defesa. Se nenhum dos 3 tickets derem certo, com o Dodson, com o Bernard, com o Spector, e ainda tem o Dorian Williams, né? O piso é o Klein que te oferece, já conhece a defesa muito mais tempo até que Poyer, que Hyde, né? Desde os tempos de Panthers. Então, é o piso, mas é uma competição interessante. O Matt falou que está bem curioso para acompanhar de perto aí durante esse training camp. Mudamos o lado da bola, falei do Dorian Williams, aí fui para o Cyrus Torrence, perguntei como que ele vê o Torrence, se ele vê o Torrence assumindo a titularidade logo de cara. É um cara que eu acho que pode nos dar um upgrade logo como right guard, apesar de eu gostar bastante do Bates, é um cara técnico, um cara com muita versatilidade, mas um cara que não tem a fisicalidade do Torrence para se tornar um guard realmente de elite, né? E aí o Matt falou, né, do Bean ter comentado que precisava de um jogador de linha ofensiva maior, mais forte, um power blocker realmente para abrir espaço e tal, e para lidar com os principais defensive tackles mais fortes, né, da NFL aí. A gente tem o Keenan Williams na divisão, o Chris Jones, nosso adversário direto no Chiefs aí e tudo mais, né? Então, bom, né, ouvir isso do Bean, porque nos deixa um pouco menos preocupado com os Bills querendo que, de repente, o Torrence mude de corpo, perca peso, como a gente já viu os caras fazerem com o Epenesa, né, no outro lado da bola, até o mesmo Bug Basham. E a gente espera que isso não aconteça com o Torrence, que eles utilizem o Torrence com o que ele tem de melhor, que é essa força física que ele demonstra, né? Então o Bean fez esses comentários, mas o Matt falou: olha, gente, a gente pensa como o McGovern chegou para ser titular absoluto e recebeu um bom contrato e tudo mais, teve uma boa temporada como pass blocker, mas não foi lá grande coisa bloqueando para o jogo terrestre. A mesma coisa, o Edwards é um cara que teve uma ótima campanha no Super Bowl do Rams há 2 temporadas atrás, e chega um cara que já trabalhou com o Cromer, então não dá para descartar, né? O Bates também recebeu um bom salário, né? Os Bills cobriram a oferta do Bears para segurar ele. Então são jogadores que estão ali para, né, principalmente McGovern e Bates, com um salário para se titular, e os Bills não têm usado novatos logo de cara, exigido tanto de novatos logo de cara, né? Então não sabe se o Torrence já vai chegar sendo titular, vai ser legal para acompanhar no training camp, mas é outra área que vai ter muitos nomes para essa disputa, essas 2 posições, nos dois lugares de guards, right guard e left guard. E até mesmo a gente sabe que o Bates pode jogar dos 2 lados, a gente sabe que o McGovern também pode jogar de right guard e left guard. Então, assim, a gente vai ver se o Torrence, que jogou muito de right guard no college, vai ser usado em left guard, talvez. Então, tudo isso vai ser interessante a gente acompanhar essas disputas no interior da linha aí, né, do Buffalo Bills. E o Matt ainda mencionou que está curioso para ver o Spencer Brown, né, que está aí com essa titularidade meio que assegurada, né? Os Bills não trouxeram nenhuma competição muito real para ele, o Kissenberry voltando, mas está curioso para ver se o Brown de fato vem bem e segura essa vaga titular, e faz por merecer segurar essa vaga titular, jogando bem, né? E comentei que hoje lá no jogo de beisebol lá do Micah Hyde, né, que teve hoje lá em Buffalo, perguntei se ele teve lá, ele não teve, né, mas que o Spencer Brown ganhou, né, o home run derby lá do jogo de beisebol do Micah Hyde hoje, batendo o Josh Allen, que foi o campeão do ano passado. Então, pelo menos as costas do Spencer Brown parecem estar boas, né, bem saudáveis para ele poder tá fazendo o seu papel bem feito, tem uma boa off-season. A primeira off-season saudável que ele vai ter desde que entrou na NFL. Então, a expectativa é grande para o Spencer Brown para essa temporada, né? No Superchat aqui, o Carl Tom ainda perguntou, né, se a gente o que o Matt esperava aí do nosso jogo terrestre, né, com o Morris, com o Torrence e com o Brown do lado direito, de repente abrindo espaço, né? E realmente o Matt falou: olha, são veteranos no Morse e o Brown agora entrando no 3º ano, são caras que são nasty, vamos dizer assim, né? São caras que são agressivos no jogo terrestre, né? E podem, de repente, ainda ensinar um truque a mais para o novato Torrence aí, que tem toda a capacidade física do mundo para ser uma força ali, né? Eu acho que o Torrence tem total condição de se tornar realmente o go-to guy quando os Bills precisarem aquela jarda difícil ou precisar correr essas power runs, né, correr atrás do Torrance deve se tornar a saída mais fácil pela fisicalidade, pelo tamanho, pela força do novato, né? Então, bem interessante ver isso aí. E aí, continuando nesse caminho aqui, né, o pessoal perguntou, o Rafa perguntou do Shaqiri, né, e das opções do slot, o Hart, né, e aí o Matt falou, olha, o Hart todo mundo tá falando só para slot, mas, cara, se a gente pegar o tape lá de New Orleans, ele é um cara que jogou por fora também, tem velocidade, então o Shaqiri também tem essa capacidade de velocidade, de jardas após recepção, então vai ser bem interessante ver como é que o Dorsey usa essas peças, né? E aí eu mencionei o quão bom é a gente poder ver muitos nomes sendo jogados na disputa. Eu sei que todo torcedor gosta de ver nome realmente de estrela, né? Porque, pô, você adiciona um Hopkins, você adiciona um Derrick Henry para ser running back, pô, a gente meio que tá tranquilo, adicionou o cara ali, vai dar certo. Só que nem sempre é possível, né, gente? É o preço a se pagar com escolha, é encaixar no salary cap, é tudo isso. Então, quando não é possível... E, assim, todas essas estrelas, né, assim, o Henry era um cara com uma expectativa bem alta, né, naquele draft que ele foi selecionado, era o Elliott e o Henry, eu até gostava mais do Henry do que o Elliott naquele draft, mas o Elliott saiu bem antes, né, e o Hopkins é um cara que, pô, fez sucesso em Clemson, mas foi escolhido no fim já da primeira rodada e tinha alguns questionamentos. Então, o que eu quero dizer com isso? Todas essas super estrelas, a maioria delas não chegam com esse hype todo na liga, elas se tornam em algum momento. O próprio Diggs foi uma escolha lá de quinta rodada, né? Então, nesses nomes todos que a gente tem, não que algum desses possa se tornar uma super estrela. Poder pode, mas garantia a gente nunca tem, né? Se vai se tornar uma super estrela algum desses caras. Mas a possibilidade existe, né? O Shaqiri treinou com o Molds nessa off-season, ele estava tendo mais oportunidades no final da temporada passada. E eu estou bem curioso para ver o Khalil Shaqiri nesse training camp, né? O Gabriel Davis sabe que precisa dar mais e está num contract year, vai precisar fazer uma ótima temporada se ele quiser ganhar dinheiro, né? Afinal de contas, essa última free agency, os wide receivers não ganharam muito dinheiro, então ou o Gabriel Davis se estabelece como um cara muito promissor, muito bom para ganhar um ótimo dinheiro na free agency, ou ele vai acabar não achando, né, essa possibilidade aí. Então, o Shaqiri querendo ganhar espaço, o Hart querendo ganhar espaço, o Kincaid foi draftado e pode muito bem começar como um big slot, né? E o Matt concordou com isso. Então, tem muitas peças, os Bills têm muitas peças aí, muitos tickets, como eu falei da loteria, para que algum dê certo. E esse dá certo, a gente não sabe se o dá certo é ser um bom titular, é se tornar uma nova estrela. Tudo é possível, afinal de contas, a gente tem um baita quarterback, a gente tem um ataque muito produtivo, um ataque que a gente reclama às vezes, esse ataque não tá tão bom. Aí a gente vai ver ele tá lá no top da liga, ali no top 5 da liga e tal. Então, assim, tem suas deficiências, óbvio, mas a gente tem um Dorsey no segundo ano que a gente espera melhora. A gente espera um Allen saudável voltar a jogar nível de MVP. A gente sabe que tem um Diggs, um wide receiver 1 que atrai muita atenção muitas vezes e tem se tornado de costume os adversários cobrirem muito o Stephon Diggs e forçar algum outro jogador batê-los, né? Então, essa é uma oportunidade de ouro para caras como Kincaid, para caras como Shaqiri, Davis, Hart, né? Todos esses alvos aí se estabelecerem como chamarem atenção para si, se tornarem grandes alvos, né? Afinal de contas, eles vão estar vendo muito um contra um, eles não vão estar tendo muita atenção até que eles se mostrem essas ameaças. Então, há muitas possibilidades, né? Há muitas peças para o Dorsey usar. E os Bills estão bem servidos de possibilidades aí para darem certo, tanto na linha, quanto nesses alvos, quanto no grupo de running backs, né, com o Damian Harris adicionado agora também ao Cook, o Hines pode receber passes, e também na defesa, nos linebackers, vários jogadores aí para disputar essa posição, e eu não tenho dúvida que algum desses caras, gente, eu tenho certeza que vai nos surpreender para o lado positivo, tá? Eu acho que eu tenho falado muito do Bernardo, eu tenho muita expectativa nele, eu gosto muito do Dorian Williams, falava já pré-draft quanto a isso, mas não sei, às vezes pode não ser o Dorian, pode não ser o Bernardo, às vezes pode ser o Dodson, que eu mencionei aqui, que lembra o Angelo Crowell, né, que foi um linebacker nosso que jogou ali por 3 anos muito bem, o Matt falou, né, 3 temporadas muito produtivas, né, ele buscou ali na hora as estatísticas, e de fato o Crowell é um cara que jogou muito bem, era um jogador de terceira rodada que estava na reserva de London Fletcher e de Takeo Spikes, que o Spikes se machucou, uma baita dupla de linebackers, tá, gente? Para quem gostava de Edmonds e Milano, esses dois aí, para mim, ainda superiores. E quando o Sparks machucou, o Crowell entrou e jogou muito bem e foi muito produtivo. Acho que o Dodson tem uma capacidade de fazer isso. Então, acho que a gente vai ser surpreendido positivamente, pelo menos por um desses caras aí que vai estar nessa disputa de linebacker. E o mesmo a gente pode ser nos alvos, né? Com Hardy, com Shakir, com Gabe, com Kincaid agora, que vai nos dar mais esse grupo 12. O que é o grupo 12? O 12 personnel. É o grupo com um running back e 2 tight ends, né? Por isso o 12 ali, 2, né? Um running back, 2 tight ends. Os Bills vão usar isso muito mais, não necessariamente sempre parecendo como um grupo 12 normal, que tem os 2 tight ends na linha, mas sim parecendo mais até mesmo com o nosso grupo 11, o 11, que é com um running back e um tight end, e aí 3 wide receivers, o Kincaid sendo o big slot. E aí o Matt, eu perguntei o quanto ele gostou dessa escolha, ele falou que sabe que é difícil comparar, né, ao Kelsey, mas que o Kincaid realmente traz muita coisa assim para a gente, similar aos mismatches que o Kelsey causa aos adversários. Então o Kincaid pode, né, se ele realmente se tornar esse algo que se espera dele aí, vindo do draft, se tornar um mini Kelsey para a gente aí, porque realmente como que você vai cobri-lo? Com um slot, com um nickel cornerback, quando ele estiver alinhado no slot, e aí você vai ter a vantagem de tamanho, de força do Kincaid, você vai ter a vantagem também de poder correr com a bola, tendo um bloqueador a mais, com muita superioridade, o Kincaid bloqueando contra um cornerback de níquel, a vantagem é totalmente para o Kincaid bloqueando. Então você vai marcar dessa maneira, ou você vai ficar numa defesa base, botar um linebacker para marcar o Kincaid, e aí você vai ver o Kincaid correndo e ganhando do linebacker na agilidade, na velocidade. Então, muito, muito interessante, expectativa muito alta de que jeito ele já vai ser usado já nesse ano, né? De acordo com o Matt ali também. E perguntei para o Matt, né, como foi ali esse contato dele que ele tem com o Bernardo Ditzer, né? Que é um abraço aí para o Bernardo, que o Matt escreveu uma matéria lá sobre o Bernardo, as idas dele a Buffalo e tudo mais, né? E para ver jogos, sempre tenta ir uma vez por ano e tal, e fizeram essa amizade, né? E aí o Matt explicou como que surgiu ali, né, a possibilidade ali de fizeram amizade, mantém amizade até hoje, e aí fez aquela matéria legal explicando lá o Bernardo, os amigos ali, quando vão lá para Buffalo assistir os jogos, e no final, né, acabei fazendo ele apresentando o Botafogo ao Matt aí, e falei que não sei se o Bernardo ia gostar muito, não sei que time que o Bernardo torce, né? Eu não lembro se eu vi alguma coisa de Fluminense. Se não é isso, Bernardo, me desculpa, acho que eu vi alguma coisa assim no Twitter, mas não me lembro agora. E aí ele falou que outros 2 amigos parecem que torcem pro Flamengo, né? E aí eu falei, o Flamengo sempre eu queimo o filme. Desculpa os parceiros flamenguistas aí, mas eu sempre queimo o filme, né? Meto que o Flamengo é o Patriots. E no fim das contas é dessa maneira que eu apresento para a galera aí. Mas é isso, Mafia. Muito legal ter aqui, ó. O Rogério mandando aqui. Se o Botafogo é líder, dá pro Abraço pro Rogério aí, flamenguista, parceiraço. E, gente, é isso. Muito legal ter o Matt aqui. Acho que deu para todo mundo curtir legal, né? Resumidamente, foi essa resenha que a gente teve aí. Na terça-feira, eu vou estar com o Murta aqui, né? O Arthur Murta. Foi meu parceiro, foi o meu antecessor no podcast da Liga dos 32, né? E tava lá com a fantasia do futebol, né? Relacionada a fantasy futebol, sabe muito de Bills, parceiraço, já teve comigo em outras possibilidades, vai estar com a gente na terça-feira, às 18 horas, tá? Com o próximo Leading the Charge, a gente vai trocar uma ideia legal sobre tudo aí que envolve Bills, principalmente os novatos, draft, os acontecimentos aí, a expectativa para o Rookie Minicamp e para os OTAs, o grupo de 53, quem fica, quem está correndo risco. Vou trocar essa ideia legal com o Murta na terça-feira. E no domingo que vem, o Greg Thompson do Cover One vai estar com a gente aqui também, né? O Greg que já teve várias vezes no canal, ainda não desde que o Leading the Charge veio para o Buffalo Rumblings, mas é sempre uma satisfação estar com o Greg, sabe muito, né? E a gente vai trocar uma ideia legal sobre tudo relacionado a Bills também. Agradeço demais a todos que estiveram juntos. Não saia sem deixar o like aí, por favor, né? Se inscrever no canal do Buffalo Rumblings para não perder nenhum Leading the Charge, que agora está exclusivo no canal do Buffalo Rumblings. Estou lançando uns cortes, às vezes, lá no meu canal, tá? Então já tem o corte lá do que eu falei do Kincaid, na escolha do Kincaid. Já tem o corte do Torrance, já tem o corte do Dorian Williams. E vou lançar o do Shorter, tá? Vou lançar o do Shorter amanhã, provavelmente, tá? Então, vou estar fazendo em breve também um vídeo aí sobre os rivais de divisão, né? E de repente vou expandir também para ir fazendo um preview de toda a liga aí, né? Revendo tudo que aconteceu via draft, via free agency. Então, vou estar fazendo esse trabalho no meu canal também. E para isso, eu venho agradecer a todos que deixam o seu like, que se inscrevem no canal, porque ajudam bastante. E quem já contribuiu com o Pix também, né? Que está aí na tela, fernandoschmude@hotmail.com. Afinal de contas, me ajuda bastante, me ajuda demais quem contribui com o Pix aí, para que eu possa estar cada vez produzindo mais conteúdo, possa estar cada vez me dedicando mais ao canal, tanto o Lead the Charge do Buffalo Rumblers, quanto esse conteúdo extra também no meu canal, né? Possa estar cobrindo cada vez mais. Segue lá no Instagram, né? O arroba Bills News, Bills News BR, né? Eu tô tudo que é notícia de Bills atualizado diariamente lá no Bills News BR no Instagram, tá? Então, tudo conectado ao Instagram do Bills News BR, o canal do Fernando Schmude, o Buffalo Rumblers, o meu @Fernando Schmude no Twitter, né? E fica aí na tela o fernandoschmude@hotmail.com para você que quer realmente colaborar, me patrocinar, me ajudar a continuar com esse trabalho, cobrindo da melhor maneira possível os Bills para toda a máfia, não só aqui no Brasil, mas toda a América Latina e países que falam língua portuguesa, né? Essa cobertura especial que eu estou tentando fazer. Então, muito obrigado a todos que já contribuíram. Qualquer valor ajuda, não tem valor mínimo, não tem valor máximo. Sou muito grato a todos vocês que já colaboraram. Fernando, não dá, não posso, tá complicado. Deixa seu like, se inscreve no canal, divulga o conteúdo aí para que cada vez mais a máfia possa estar chegando. Não só a máfia, né? Eu vou lançar esses vídeos também de preview de outras equipes. Divulga aí para os seus amigos que gostam de NFL, para que o canal possa estar crescendo cada vez mais e eu possa estar cada vez me dedicando mais também a trazer um conteúdo legal para vocês. Beleza, Mafia? Então é isso. Eu só tenho a agradecer a todos vocês, batendo 1h16 aí de The Charge hoje. Conto com vocês na terça-feira. Arthur Murta aqui comigo para falar muito de Bills. Domingo que vem, Greg Thompson, do Cover One, tá? Trazendo muita gente legal para participar aí. E hoje, né, Matt Parrino. Foi demais aí poder contar com o Matt, que tá aí sempre cobrindo os Bills de perto e tá lá com o podcast Shout, né, com o Ryan Talbot, que foi premiado aí, inclusive, agora, recentemente, essa semana, aí, como o melhor podcast lá do Syracuse.com. Valeu, Mafia. Muito obrigado pela participação de todos. Vejo vocês na terça-feira. E é isso. Só tenho a agradecer. Até mais, até a próxima. Go Bills!